All right. Welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we starting with today, Samo?
Well, I'm going to give you the choice. Do you want to do Wheel of Time first, or do you want to do stupid shit first?
No, I was flipping through Wheel of Time this afternoon, so let's see how much we get through. I should have looked closer at things. We should have actually finished up with chapter 7 last time because there's only one more chapter left of Rand and Matt and Egwene, and then it switches to several chapters of the girls.
Okay, so we finished with chapter 6, but we should have done chapter 7, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we're on chapter 7. I don't know how much thoughts you have on this. This is getting ready, leaving Rudine, chasing after Couladin. Um,
Okay, so to sum up, uh, lots of stupid crap happened. Matt's luck came through. Uh, we all the armies are coalescing based on what they saw, and those that were
mhm.
at the bowl saw the real truth, but those that were hanging out to the side are still kind of guessing. And Couladin is gathering his masses, Rand is gathering his, and they're all starting to head towards Karhine. What happens in chapter 7 that
Well,
adds to
it's
that?
it starts with Egwene's perspective, which is nice, um, because
Except our
we're
audience hates Egwene.
yeah,
Our
but
Scott is our audience, by the way. No, we
the
picked up 2 new subscribers. 52 now. Oh, and so
um
by the way, there will be a part 1, part 2. If you're here for the other stuff, we'll get to that in part 2. I got some
yeah,
fitness thoughts, and I'm gonna throw some stuff at Heath
oh dear.
with current events, and also because I'm reading Madness of Crowds, I sent him a message, and I'm still trying to fish inside my brain what I was thinking at the time, but
Yeah,
I was reading while I was drunk, so that's always a good combination.
take notes. Um, no, I like when we get these outside perspectives of Rand, especially, but any of the main characters, of somebody else looking at them and evaluating rather than seeing inside their head and knowing what they're thinking. We're kind of guessing. We're it's classic showing not telling. So we're it, we're getting more information about Rand by actually getting less information about Rand because we're seeing what he's doing and the effect he's having on others.
Keep going. I'm bringing up comments, so
Um,
just to make sure we cover anything that's not spoilery in the regular part.
we also get more Gawain and uh one of her one of her main traits that is also that is both a benefit and a character flaw. Um, she's driven to the point of arrogance. So she's training in the dreaming. Amos tells her to find my dream, and then she's supposed to go back to her own sleep. But she can't stop. She goes around peeking at other people's dreams now that she's gotten the hang of it. It's it's laying the foundation. It's again why the series works even where there are flaws and missteps in the writing is because Jordan keeps setting things up that then pay off. So Egwene's rise in stature and power is being set up here in the same way that Rand and Matt and parents were, so that it's not some surprise when suddenly they're heroes doing heroic things.
Sorry, I'm just reading through the comments. Scott was on fire with our last episode.
Oh
You know,
dear.
I know it's some people appreciate when you comment on the comments, but I like them to be a surprise for these episodes
Mm.
so we can kind of react to them. But in this case, I wish I would have read ahead on these because some of these are fire. Uh, as we talked about last time, Matt wasn't dead in Rydian, and he said, no, he wasn't dead. He was mostly dead. We're invoking a little Princess Bride. But he talked about Cass as the Forsaken. He prefers unknowns, but he said Leandrin should have been Amber Heard. And, but I actually disagree with that. Lanfear is Amber Heard. She's the manipulative one. You know, if Rand was the Johnny Depp, then Lanfear is the Amber Heard. Leandrin's just a bitch. So I think they cast her very well in the show. Again, we've raved about that before. She's the best cast. Uh, okay, so I'm going to save the rest for spoiler territory, even though they're not all spoilers, just so we can kind of stay focused a little bit. But I was just reading through and they were cracking me up. So thanks, Scott, for the laugh. We will get to the rest here in about 45 minutes.
Right.
But back to Egwene.
Any thoughts on that? That was
I
my
do have
thought
thoughts, but I think it might be slightly spoilery.
Okay.
On Egwene there. So where's my notepad? Gosh, my desk is so unorganized right now, which is probably why I'm not getting shit done. What are all these notes? Oh, SEL stuff. Okay. Okay. Egwene is Trump. Okay. There we go. We can keep going.
We do get a little of one of the things I've been trying to keep an eye on with the reread is seeing how Avienda develops, specifically in her connection relationship with Rand. And we actually do get a little bit of that here, but from the outside looking in with Egwene talking to her, and it's kind of a sketchy. You're supposed to be friends and you're spying on her dreams. That's a little sketchy. So, Avienda's dreams had been too painful to watch for long, naked but for that ivory bracelet, and that seemed to drag her as if it weighed 100 pounds. Avienda had been running as hard as she could across a cracked clay flat, and behind her, Rand came, a giant twice the size of an ogier, on a huge Jedin, slowly but inexorably catching up.
Well, yeah, and I think we're noticing more because the Aiel culture was so foreign to anything that we know as an open society. And it's still, I think it's still a little bit weak of a development, but at the same time, you know, those juices start flowing and you make bad decisions and then you hate yourself for those decisions sometimes. And I think that's where she is. Because you know there is the cognitive brain and the reactionary brain, and unfortunately, when it comes to procreation, the reactionary brain does take over quite a bit. And I think she's in that moment right now where she's like, juices are flowing and it's flowing towards this person, but at the same time, I'm Elayne's first sister, and I can't do that. We're not sister wives. Which actually makes me wonder if it was a different culture, would it have resulted differently? Because she feels bad because of the current events and the order, but realistically, there is the chance that they could be sister wives down the road. So would it be as big of a mind fuck if she was like Carhine, which is, yeah, they did shady shit, but they did it under the shadows and they knew it was wrong. Uh, it was just part of the game. Or even Two Rivers, where no, you can't do that. It's just not proper. But yeah, you're right. Egwene spying on her dreams is kind of creepy. It's like picking up your best friend's cell phone and going through it.
Yeah, and you, on to add to that, she spying on Avienda's um, dreams, makes her more sympathetic, but she can't. She's thinking that, well, I can't very well say that you're lying to me about Rand because I saw what you dreamed about him. But then Matt has your typical guy dreams, and she's gonna get all in a snit about, and looking and thinking down to Matt because of his dreams.
Double standards. By the way, if there are any ladies in the audience, we have sexy time dreams at least every day. So,
I was actually thinking about this because you'd said that you wanted to do some sexy time, and I had a thought about how uh cruel and myopic it is when women just want to cuddle.
okay, remember, okay, women when they want to cuddle. Hold on.
All
I'm
right.
making notes. Well, no, I'm all about the cuddling. You just got to like do both.
You just women don't understand. Yeah, well. You know, so this is where the Wheel of Time stuff ties into the other stuff we rant about. And we spent a lot of time on this with that stupid articles that you shared about how Jordan is now being retconned into being a misogynist when not that long ago he was praised for how well he wrote women. And now, he's problematic and needs to be canceled. But the reason it works so well, both in in thought provoking and in some humorous context, some comedic relief, is because he's very good at showing how neither side really knows how the other thinks, let alone what the other thinks. And yet both sides create ideas and expectations like
Mm-hmm.
they do know. Like Egwene here, you know, sniffing at Matt because he had naughty dreams.
Well, and also I think some context should be thrown into it from the author's standpoint. Remember, this book and the three subsequent to it were in the era of the popularity of men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And that was actually part of the feminist movement was, yeah, we're different, but we're still capable. We just have to do it a different way, and you have to understand that, and you have to give us a chance in that realm. You can't put us in a box and expect us to perform the same, but we are as capable as you. And that was a different era of feminism than what we have now, where you can't even tread on any kind of difference. You have to have uh, what was the big blonde chick from Game of Thrones?
Oh, Brienne.
Brienne, which I loved her character, but at the same time, that's like the expectation that man should have for women. They are all Brienne.
Well, and the reason I both liked it and didn't like it is didn't like it for the things you say, but I liked it because, okay, if you're going to have a woman acting like a male action hero, then she's going to have to be that big.
Mm-hmm. No, they did her well, but it's the when you get to the woke era of everything,
Mm-hmm.
it's you have to expect every well, it's actually a little bit of a bigotry in and of itself. You have to
Mm-hmm.
expect every woman to be that way.
Why
Yeah.
is this new crappy so-called Lord of the Rings show that I refuse to watch? Why are they making Galadriel, who is one of the most powerful and well-respected characters within the world and outside by the fans? Now they've made her have to be a guy. They've made her have to be Guy Ladriel. She has to fight like Aragorn and Boromir, or she's not a hero. She's not powerful. She's not a leader. You watch the scenes that she's in, and everyone around her is awestruck at her etherealness, her beauty, her wisdom. And she's quite powerful when it comes to elvish magic. She has all of these things going for her, but no, we have to slap on some armor and give her a sword and have her single-handedly take down a troll when the whole fellowship had to work together to take down a single troll, or else she's not a hero. That is as insulting as that stupid, crappy, cringy sex scene between Moiraine and Swan.
Well,
You're being condescending and stupid.
we could take it a step further because we can go back to the Hobbit when we talk about trolls. He couldn't even take one down by sheer might. We had to resort to something else, which was wit. And he used wit to take down the trolls by keeping them up till sunlight. And what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I mean, even one-on-one, and you had Aragorn or Boromir, or pick the manliest of manly men, and a troll there, and I would be more appreciative of the wit to win the battle than
And
just fisticuffs.
the hobbits are the primary heroes of that story. Not Aragorn, not Boromir, even though Aragorn is the High King, even though Boromir is like the ultimate warrior. And then you've got Legolas and Gimli adding their martial prowess to it. And yet they're not the primary heroes. The hobbits are. Because what's more important than that physical prowess are the
Is the loyalty and dedication, and
are the
yeah,
mentals
it's not even
and
the
the
wit.
intangibles.
It's the willing to do what other people won't.
Mm-hmm.
Was the moral of that
It,
story.
it's why I can't wait to get through this book, because in the next one we finally get back to men. And that's, just thinking out loud here, it just suddenly dawned on me, that's one of the reasons she's such a favorite character, because all the other main characters are very powerful. But again, back to kind of what started this rant is Egwene is not powerful in the same way Rand is. Moiraine is not powerful in the same way Lan is. Uh, 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 when we get to Nyneave and Elayne here, they are very powerful channelers, but they're still there's women. They're not as powerful physically.
So for the nerds in the audience, one of my favorite Final Fantasies from a story perspective was Final Fantasy VIII. One of my least favorite from a gameplay perspective was Final Fantasy VIII. And the reason being was, if anybody remembers how, or even cares, that you built your character based on the
junctions.
The junctions, yeah. I was trying to remember the right term, but yeah, you put a freat on your character, and as you gain levels, you got certain benefits from that, or you put Shiva, so every character could have these on them, and basically by the end of the game, if you wanted to beat it with just max power, you would have every character do every junction all the way through. And so basically everybody was the same character with a different avatar. And that actually bothered me, because I hated that you're just another game like that was Skyrim. You go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to be a roguish type player, and I'm going to use a bow, and you get to 100% on the bow skills, and you get to 100% on stealth and everything. Well, then you can get to 100% on melee, and you can get to 100% on magic, and you basically max out everything with the same damn character.
Yeah.
And that makes it uninteresting to a certain point.
That's why Dragon Age has more replay value than
because everything's different. Yeah, and I'm on my fifth or sixth playthrough of Inquisition on Dragon Age, but I finally figured out how to get the customs from 1 and 2 to transfer over to the PS4 for 3. So huzzah! So this is my first playthrough with the all 3 game progressions, and so far it's very enjoyable, because the little subtle differences you notice, especially if you played the game 5 times. But that actually makes it uninteresting. So the point of that is, when we go into modern art as we see it to make women men makes the whole damn thing uninteresting because I appreciate the strengths of women. I love women. I'm very, very straight. And I love the things about women that I love about them.
Hmm.
I don't want them to be men.
No. A great example of this is two of the best scenes in the first Avengers movie are the two interrogation scenes with Black Widow. When we first meet her, where she's acting weak, and then she does it again where you have Loki, one of the most devious people, cunning people in the entire universe, and she outwits him. She outcunnings him with the way she plays him by making him think she's playing her. That is totally different to what you get with, like, say, Captain Marvel, who's just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody keeps saying how awesome she is. You never actually see her except that she's super powerful. No, those Black Widow scenes are awesome. That's impressive.
Well, and I will say with the newer Marvel movies, the best thing they did, which they started going more down the everything is the same route,
Mhm.
but one of the best things they did was the use of Black Widow in the later movies taking over for Fury because that was the best use for her.
You know,
She wasn't supernatural. She wasn't a god like Thor. She wasn't Hulk, but yet she was one of the most brilliant minds in the series. And when Fury was gone because of the Thanos snap, she took his place, and I think that was brilliant.
yeah. Getting back to this, that actually leads right into the next bit here, where it switches to Moraine's perspective. Uh, at
Still in
the
chapter 7.
Yeah, at the last few pages of this chapter, and you get you get her mind and the things she's thinking, and I think this is the first time we've gotten her perspective since she went in the rings. I think up to this point, all we've seen is her the reaction to it, how changed she is, that she went through, saw something traumatic. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we ever got any information on what she saw yet, because I think this is the first perspective of hers we've gotten since then. Which is quite a bit because that was kind of early on in the last book.
I don't want to say a spoiler, but I believe we talked about her talking about sleeping with Rand was a bad
That's
idea.
this right here.
Okay,
That
that's
that was
this right here. So we've talked about it before, but it is here. It's
Yeah,
right here.
but
Okay.
that was in a spoiler talk where we were talking a little more about Moiraine, and it's an interesting little inner monologue because she's shocked by the idea, but she also recognizes that
She would
in
do it if it was the seemed
in
like the best course of
in
action.
some possible
Yeah.
future, a certain string of events led her to think that that was the best thing to do, that she needed to do that, and it was disastrous.
You know who I always thought of as Moiraine? Remember the old school daytime soap operas? Susan Lucci.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I always pictured Moiraine as Susan Lucci. So if I was Rand, I would have done it.
uh where was it? Oh, here we are. So okay, so page 189, Lan is being Lan, and he's grumpy and protective of Moraine, so he doesn't like how she's become. And she answers, he has been drawing further and further away from me, Lan, and I must be close to him. He needs whatever guidance I can give, and I will do everything short of sharing his bed to see that he gets it. So that's where she has the thought. But she's but she's still her, because the reason she's standing over here by herself is because she was stubbornly still trying to change Rand's mind about crossing the dragon wall with the Aiel. when, okay, first of all, he's already made up his mind. Why aren't you trying to guide him along the path he's chosen to try and make sure that he makes the best decisions along this path as you see it? And two, I think that ship has kind of sailed since Couladin is leading his army to Karheen. You know, you're not going to be able to get the nations together fast enough to counter him before he ravages a big chunk of the land.
Well, especially since you don't even have a way to get there first, unless you're considering portal stones again, which we've seen the disasters, the successes and failures that have come from that. So you're kind of, you might put Matt to the front of the line there because you're tossing the dice.
And to get here, that was just a few thousand, and it nearly killed Rand.
Well, but if you figured out a way to use them, you could use them to go from nation to nation to mobilize versus just taking an army somewhere.
Yeah. All right, that's all I have on that. If you have any,
if you really think about it, the way the passes were in the spine, if they had taken a few hundred through, because what was the steading that was near Karhine that they went to?
There's a couple. Shanghai, or is that the one that's farther south?
That's the one where it was Sofu.
Yeah, that might be it.
That was the one they went to after the Black Wind was at the ways.
Yeah.
They could have gone there with a few hundred and filled in one of the passes, and they probably could have held off an army for a while. But hindsight's 2020.
All right, so now we're switching to the girls.
The girls meaning Nyneave and Elayne, right?
Yeah,
because Egwene is not there anymore.
All right, so to set the scene, they're trying to escape overland, because actually, I'm not entirely sure if it's ever well explained. Why didn't they just get on the boat with Bail Doman, who was going to go drop the male Adam in the deepest part of the ocean he knew, but then they could have sailed back to Tyr. I mean, they know Rand's not there anymore. Well, they do know he's in the waste. I guess cutting across country. I don't know exactly where they're going. Do they ever say? Are they headed back to the tower? Are they headed to the waste to try and meet up with Rand? Why are they cutting cross country instead of getting on a boat, which would have been a lot quicker? The way travel
wasn't it because of the turmoil in Tarabon? They kind of had to skip out because of the freaking basically civil war that was going on.
No, they had enough time to gather themselves and their wits, and then they gave Doman and Eganin the male Adam, and they were going to go dump it in the sea, and then the others were headed cross country because that's a long freaking way. So they're going from Tarabon into Amadisha and then on into I don't know where. So somebody say something if I missed it, but I'm not entirely sure that it's ever fully explained why they're traveling this way.
Well, I could see how they would know that Samael's in Ilion, and they wouldn't want to go that way. But they could still go to Tyr.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Yeah. That's a good question, or it might be just something that it was one of those things that either Jordan didn't think about or he just hoped nobody asked.
Anyway,
that's how books go sometimes.
So they're cutting across country. They're into Amadisha, and then stuff happens. So my general thoughts as I was flipping back through these these couple of chapters here is Nynaeve uh at first glance on the surface is an annoying bully. And a lot of fandom commenters in message boards, that's been a long-standing critique of her, and especially people who don't like her. But I think what Jordan's showing us here is she actually can lead. She actually is a good leader, or at least potentially a good leader. She has a good head. She makes good decisions. She's pretty quick on her feet. You see when she's when the White Cloak border guards stop them, she's pretty quick on her feet in dealing with that guy. When you would expect that Tom would take the lead there, but she takes the lead and she's pretty quick on her feet. She makes good decisions, but the problem is that she's not actually leading. She's directing. She's not used to leading. She's used to giving directives.
She's issuing orders without creating a motivation to follow the order. Is what she's doing.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just kind of glancing at a few lines from experience. Her little mental turmoil over her relationship with Elayne, I really identify with, because I'm from a very humble background too. Something similar to what Nyneave would have been from, right? With one parent, with not a whole lot of money, and you kind of work your way up and scrap to earn respect versus actually just being given a title or something along those lines. And I get a little bit snarky with even my clients because you get to the first world problems. You part of your job is listening to people and talking to them and everything. And there are moments where I'm just like, I'm sorry, Tina, I can't identify right there. Your day was ruined because the napkins didn't match the drapes at this wedding that you went to that had caviar and lobster as the main course. It's like, can I can we go without power for a week and see how you do? Or you have to boil your water for a while. Let's go there. You can't shower because you don't even have a bath at some point. Let's do that for a second and see how much this matters to you. And I understand that because I put on a good show, and I've become a pretty good actor in this way. But there is that thought in your mind where you're just like, shut up. And I can see Nyneave having those moments with Elayne because.
And then you add to that, she already has a thin skin where she has this quick fire temper hiding this insecurity because she was already in a position of authority when she was considered too young and pretty to be in that position. So now you're just doubling down on that, but it's more complicated because Elayne is also a friend. So, it's going to grate on her, and she doesn't have, the calmest of disposition, but that's where she's potentially, minor spoiler, going to be a good leader. But right now it's all kind of tied up with her temper, with her block, which is part of it. So Jordan is kind of
one thing
building up on all these things that will pay off big time later in one of my favorite scenes.
One thing that plays into temper, though, that I don't think Jordan ever fully brings out, but we see Nynaeve develop, is jealousy.
Mm.
Because she got her position, even though she was too young and pretty to have it, and had to gain the respect. So add another layer to the onion that is her relationship with Elayne. Elayne's young youth and prettiness actually are beneficial for her position that she's used to.
Mhm.
And we get the other side of that here soon, I think. This book or the next book, where we get a lot of Elayne's perspective.
I think we get a lot more in the next book.
Yeah. So we see her jealousy of Nynaeve to a big degree because she's actually a little bit resentful of the fact that people see her as young and pretty. Whereas Nynaeve had to overcome that.
Where when she
As
looks at Nynaeve, she sees someone who's
you know,
capable, who's earned authority, and also is very powerful, has earned respect because she's so powerful in the one power. Which,
mhm.
even though Elayne is one of the most powerful ever, and then along comes Nynaeve, and she's a magnitude higher.
Well, and we look at both directions of this relationship. They were both born that way. Nynaeve was born that powerful with the power, and Elayne was born that powerful with nobility. And they both are jealous of the parts of that they didn't have when just from birth, when they realistically should have been focusing, if it was a perfect world,
Mm-hmm.
on what they earned themselves, and we wouldn't have had this bickering kind of relationship. But that's human nature.
Well, but that's where I think Jordan keeps the series so engaging, even though it is so long, is because won't go into it because it's spoiler, but just keep paying attention here. And the storyline, especially early on in the first couple of reads, this storyline was one of my least favorites, such that the first several times I reread Fires of Heaven, I mostly skipped these chapters. But then later, when you see it pay off, when you see how the dynamic with Nyneave and Elayne changes as they do, as their relationship with each other does develop and change, then it becomes much more interesting because you realize what this foundation is setting up. Because there will be a change. These things that you're talking about the dynamic and the tension between the two, later becomes much more complementary.
Which we want to nitpick at author contribution to this. What probably would have made it better for us young men at the time would have been to have more Tom and Jylen point of
Yes.
view,
Yes.
where we can see that, because even on the fifth and sixth and eighth read of these, you kind of you it's still hard as a guy to identify as you're going through. And realistically, these two characters that you like a lot, which I wasn't the biggest Jylen fan, but I love, everybody loves Tom. I mean,
Oh
if
yeah.
you don't love Tom, you're not a Wheel of Time
It,
fan.
that was one
And
of the
that's
reasons that I would skip through these, is because I kept wanting, okay, well,
they
what's
were
Tom
just kind of
thinking
like
here?
they were the redheaded stepchildren
They were along for
of
the ride.
these books. Yeah. You don't get a good Tom experience till Matt gets back into the picture. Uh and again, I think Jylen just slides and slides and slides. Book 3, he was great, and then after that, he just keeps sliding down.
It's like,
And
oh yeah, you're here. I forgot about you.
well, not only that, but he kind of becomes a simp, realistically, with his do we have a
Lady.
Methera yet?
We've met her, and
Okay. Yeah.
he keeps referencing her, so you know that this, you know, low class guy from the slums of one of the slummiest cities, uh I mean, they literally walk in mud. They literally don't have paved streets. One of the slummiest areas, and he's pining for this queen.
Which could have actually been a better story than it was.
Yes. Yes.
It could have been the Princess and the Frog, realistically. Uh and I think he kind of dropped the ball. This is where Scott's right, where the too many characters gets in the way. He didn't have time to develop that. It was just there.
Yeah. I I think it's only partly, maybe mostly too many characters. I think a big chunk of it though is the emphasis he puts on which characters. Because there is time we could have been spending with Sandar and Tom, rather than, you know, we could have gotten more from them, as you say, and it would have been more interesting for the reader to look at Nyneave and Elayne from the outside for a little bit by taking some time, taking half a chapter to give us one of their perspectives.
And you could even have his thoughts, and something along the lines with, I only met her once. Why can't I get her off my mind? Something stupid like that, which all most of us guys have done. We met a girl at a party or something, and you're like,
and why does he think of her and treat her so differently than Elayne, who he was, because she's a high lady, and he was pretty immediately deferential to her because of where he comes from, because of how, where he comes from Tyr, and how the culture is there. And he wouldn't have had to add to anything if you just take this same chapter. So kind of skipping along here. Okay.
Yeah. I got another thought on that, but it would be a spoiler to the other characters that I think would enhance that thought. So,
like
I made a note.
A great example of that would be the Figs and Mice chapter. Okay, so Nyneave and Elayne go along. Nyneave sees this signal. They go in. They're drugged by this lady because I just brain farted on the new Emerald's name.
Elida.
Oh, yeah. So Elida has sent out this message that she wants these girls, especially Elayne, she wants her back. And so she drugs her to try and Shanghai them off to the White Tower. Okay, so those are two good chapters, 8 and 9, where we get Nynaeve's perspective. We kind of get what's going on here.
Do you have the paperback?
Yeah.
Okay, so go to chapter 9 on page 201.
Uh-huh.
Go to chapter 9 on page 209.
What? Okay.
Do you have two chapter 9s?
No.
No? I have two chapter 9s
in
my paperback. I was flipping ahead and I was like, a signal and a signal. What the heck? Did he just name the two chapters in a row the same? No, I have two chapter 9s. There's page 201 and there's page 209.
You probably have an older version than I do, and they fixed it.
I stole this one from Walden Books in
Hooligan.
Hey, that's talent. Put a book this thick down your pants and get out of there. I'm not proud, but I am.
So you get you get some good stuff from Elayne's point of view here in
how did I never notice that reading?
I don't know.
Did I read the same chapter? I didn't even drink when I first read this book.
How did you not notice? I don't know.
Too many.
All right, but Figs and Mice, that would have been a great time to have a Tom and Sandar point of view of them sitting around going, what's going on here? Where are they? And rather than, they come barging in from Nynaeve's point of view, no, they have to figure out what's going on and find them. And you wouldn't.
Well, and we're even talking like 5 pages. In a series of probably around 1,500 pages. Or 15,000 pages, I should say.
Well, and like I say, you wouldn't have even necessarily had to add pages to it if you would have just changed the perspective. As we're moving along in the timeline here, we keep the same pace.
You may add a couple pages, because I think the best way would have had them their perspective, and them coming to the door, and then going to Nynaeve's perspective where they barged in, and so you get both points of view on the exact same situation.
All right. Do you have any more thoughts on
what
happens here?
Figs and Mice. No. So for those that know that have listened to other episodes in our political stuff, one of my uncles was a Green Beret, and he talked about interrogating people.
Yeah.
And this I read it as a child, and the last time I talked to him in person, I was 8 or 9 years old. And I remember him talking about stuff like that. He would just like, you just leave it vague, kid, and he would. And then I read this chapter
The
as a
imagination runs
teenager,
wild. Yeah.
and I was like, Uncle Joe. I remember Uncle Joe talking about this, but
Well,
yeah.
it's kind of it's kind of some things we've mentioned along the lines here of that's sometimes the Forsaken that work best are the ones we don't know a lot about. The Murdral are really scary at first because we don't see them a lot. We don't know them a lot about them. Jaws worked because the shark wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the movie that made you afraid to go into the water. That was like the tagline of Jaws 2 or like the sequels is, talking about how it made you afraid to go in the water. Yeah, because you already can't see what's there. So your mind is already going to, run away with you. And now you've just added to that with this movie that keeps doing that to you. It keeps feeding that.
No pun intended. But yeah, fear of the unknown is the worst fear because you dwell on it. It's not something that jumps out and scares you. It's something that could jump out and scare you at every moment of every day. So you get that low grade stress the whole time. Uh, I remember one time, so when I was 14 and 15, I was a deckhand, and I would sit on the back, the ice chest, and do all the knots and put everything together and get everything ready. And we hit a wave straight on, and it went over the top. And of course, I'm sitting on the ice chest in the back, so I went over the top, and I'm in the water with 14-foot swells with an ice chest hanging onto the ice chest, which I managed to grab it, but the chum was in the ice chest, which was now open.
Oh no.
And so I've got bloody fish guts all around me, holding onto this ice chest. Can't see the boat, hoping they can find me in the swells, which they did pretty quickly. But that probably 5 minutes of life was you're thinking about everything you can't see, which is the
Mm-hmm.
boat you can't see that's looking for you, the fact that you have bloody, stinky fish guts all around you, but you dare not let go of the ice chest because you're swimming in 14-foot swells. And there could be something that thinks that tastes good, that smells it because they can smell it from like a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a long 5 minutes for them to turn around and come around and get me. But it was a good job, but it was a shitty job a lot of the time.
Uh, I do like that at least this comes from Sandar, so we do get some more from him because we like we've been grumbling about we need more. So it is nice that the figs and mice come from him. Uh, so that we get to build a little more there. All right, so the end of
We talk about influences.
uh,
I guarantee you, who's the chap that wrote Game of Thrones?
Martin, George R. R. Martin.
Yeah, so I guarantee you he read this because the whole rats in the bucket with the fire and everything that I think came from here.
When did he start writing those? I don't even remember when the books first came out because
Late 90s.
yeah, because didn't we were looking at this and I was surprised when we first started and Eye of the World came out in the late 80s and I thought the series started in the mid 90s and it's even older than I thought it was.
Now I am well aware that was a torture technique to put mice in a bucket and put it up against their chest or whatever, but at the same time, it was so the way he did it in that part of the scene, it was
Mhm.
so close to the figs and mice.
I've always found the end of this chapter confusing and interesting. And are we supposed to think anything specific here? Or is this just Jordan showing us what a complicated web there is in the world where um the Macura woman goes off to send off her report uh via pigeon, and um um she sends off a pigeon, a thin at the very 232, the last page of this chapter. The Verge launched itself north and east, straight as an arrow toward Tarvalon. After a moment's thought, Rhonda prepared another copy on another narrow strip of thin parchment and fastened it to a bird from another coop. That one headed west, for she had promised to send duplicates of all of her messages. In these hard times, the woman had to make out as best she could, and there would be no harm in it, not the sort of report she made to Nyneave. Am I supposed to know that name? Is that something we find out later? Nyneave. Wondering if she could ever get the taste fork out of her mouth, she would not have minded if the report brought just a little harm to the one who called herself Nyneave. Hoeing in his garden patch as usual, Avi paid no attention to what Rhonda was doing. And as usual, as soon as she was gone, he washed his hands and went inside. She had placed a large sheet of parchment under the strips to cushion the nib of fin. When he held it up to the afternoon light, he could make out what she had written. Soon a third pigeon was on its way, heading in still another direction.
Okay. Yes, we do see it later. It would be spoiler. I consulted my cheat book.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was something that was tickling my brain, but
So I guess I've just never
yes.
caught this name before of Nyneave. But also
Uh,
the third
yeah,
pigeon.
Nurenwin, it's not in this, but at the same time, I remember where we see her again.
Hmm.
And
Well,
yeah, it
the,
would be it's in spoiler section, so
the clue is she sends it off west. So that seems ominous since that would be back to Terabon. And we know that bad things are going on there. The
okay.
third pigeon going some other direction. I don't know if we're ever supposed to have any clue where that went.
No, it was yeah, even in my spoilery book that didn't come up.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
where do you want to stop so we can go to spoilers or
well you've been wanting to get 100 pages in. Um
well, we're at 230, right? Well,
yeah, we're at 230 right now. Where
okay,
are
so
you?
you're at 230, but you don't have the extra chapter, and I'm at 230, and I have the
That's
extra
odd.
chapter.
All right. So the next two chapters we can do real quick because that's back to Sawan. And I said that um I said that I couldn't wait to next week to get back to Min, and I forgot. Well, no, wait, dummy. We see her because she's part of Sawan's story. So we do see her. She gets a little lost because Sawan is such a type A person that she really takes charge, and so it's her perspective and it's her group here. And so Mid kind of gets outshone, and we don't get to see her a lot being Min, which if this is a reread for you, you know what I mean. Uh, but otherwise, read and find out.
Wait, say that again. Sorry, I was still on Ronde.
Uh, you you do get Min here, and I was being dumb and forgot when I said that I couldn't wait till Lord of Chaos because Min comes back, but she's she's a much more integral and fleshed out character when she's with Rand than here in the Fires of Heaven, where she's kind of buried by Sawan.
Hmm.
Because the next two chapters are Sawan and Brine.
Hmm. Yeah, she kind of becomes the codependent uh, glue to that group is basically her role at this point.
But even then, you still see that she she does stand up for herself. She is her own person. Um, when Sawan comes back and Min's kind of grumbling. But you would think Sawan would it again, Sawan is Sawan though, so she can only do what she can do. But she should rely a little more on Min because Min's a pretty worldly person.
Mm.
She grew up in a pretty rough backwater town. She's been traveling the world a bit here, and Sawan is not in a position of authority, and she doesn't have the one power anymore. But she's still her, so she's got to take charge. She's got to be the one in charge. Um, Other than that, uh, I don't have much to say about Chapter 11 except that it's amusing to watch the. So the I hadn't really thought of it before, but he pulls kind of the other side of the coin of figs and mice here because he gives us all this innuendo, but never gives us a clue about what it means.
What do you wait? What page?
Chapter 11 is 233.
Oh, I got too far ahead.
So in Mirandi, there's all these. It's apparently a very rough and lewd town.
Mm-hmm.
So there's talk about singing bawdy songs. The name of the inn is a 9-horse hitch, and it's apparently an innuendo because at the end of the chapter, Min asks, "What is a 9-horse hitch anyway?" And Swan says, in this town, Sawan said primly, "It is better not to ask." Sudden spots of color in her cheeks made Min think that she knew very well. So you kind of get the other side of the coin of your imagination running wild with what is
Okay,
that?
so Kavanaugh is from this town.
Giggity.
Giggity. Oh,
That ain't right. Um. All right, then we get some clues, and they head off to Sally Dara. And then Brian comes in, and you get. I haven't really thought about this before either, but Nynaeve early on is very much like Sawan in her leadership style, in that she doesn't inspire, she doesn't lead, she directs,
mm-hmm.
and that is how Sawan is, even despite what has happened to her. Um, she does get better later. It is interesting to see how she develops the longer she's in this position, but you get a very stark contrast with Gareth Brine, who I don't know if he ever said this, but I think is heavily inspired by Robert E. Lee.
I do think he has said
Okay,
something to that
because
degree.
Brian's horse is named Traveler, which was the
Mm-hmm.
name of Robert E. Lee's horse. Um, and he is one of the interesting things about Robert E. Lee's character is that uh, he was a very stern man. He was called the Marble Man because during West Point he did not earn a single demerit, which is hard to do because the upperclassmen and the instructors are looking for reasons to punish you. They're looking for infractions because they want you to continually push yourself, to do better and better. Uh, and uh, and so Lee was very disciplined, very stern, and yet he was very soft spoken. He was very calm, and yet when he spoke, people listened, and he had a way of giving orders that people hopped to it. And I see
Okay,
a lot of that
so
in Brian.
So parallels, according to Wheel of Time fandom wiki, he is based on two people mainly. Sir Gareth, one of King Arthur's nephews, a knight of the Round Table, but also American Civil War General Robert E. Lee.
Uh, I don't know a ton of Arthurian legends, so Sir Gareth
Yeah,
does
I'm
not ring
not
a bell at
familiar
all.
with that one.
All right. Um, but I hadn't really considered that before. Of we get, three chapters of Nynaeve and then Swan, and then this very sharp contrast with uh Gareth Brine leading these veterans and seeing his point of view of um knowing, you know, I also, I hadn't thought of this before either, but there's a parallel with Matt here. Be,
Wait. Go ahead.
so so this is the part where he's Brine does what Matt did at the beginning of Shadow Rising with the card game that we talked about Matt being self-deprecating and willing
mhm.
to embarrass himself to put everyone at ease and keep them gambling. Well, Brine does the same thing here, but he does it to put his men at ease so that because he's afraid they're walking on eggshells. He doesn't want them to be tense because somebody accidentally brought up Morgase, and
Mhm.
he's he needs to show them, not tell them. So he needs to show them that, look, that part of my life is behind me. You don't have to worry about saying her name. Let's forget about the past and let's move on and focus on what we're trying to do here. But it's better to show, not tell. So rather than just saying that, he thinks back and he tells them a story that was rather self-deprecating because it was a time where he got set down and set down hard by Morgase and Swan and Elida, uh, who and we actually find out here in a little bit when Brian and Swan finally meet of what that was all about, which I find very amusing. But I had never thought about that parallel before. Of here is someone who is considered one of the great living generals, and throughout the series there are four of them that are great captains that stand above everyone else who's a general or a leader, and Brian is one of them. And here we have here we see him doing what Matt did naturally.
Mhm.
Because that was before he got the memories. That was just his natural social skill.
Well, and I think you used the right term there, social skill, because there's more to being a leader than tactics.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously need to be able to handle that part of the situation, but at the same time, you have to be able to convince other people to follow you into that situation. We do it all the time. We do it with clients, right? It's not the fact that I know exactly the joint angles and the tempo that best would benefit them in this situation or whatever. It's having them buy into the process
Yes.
is part of it. And when it comes to male interaction, not to gender anybody here, but in male interaction, humor is huge, especially self-deprecating humor. Because realistically, if I make a small penis joke, you know one of two things. Either I have a tiny penis and I have accepted it and I'm cool with it, or it's massive. It's one of the two. And and when you're following a general into combat and he makes a self-deprecating comment, he's either completely out of his league or he's extremely capable. One of the two, and he wouldn't be where he is if he wasn't extremely capable. Now Matt has a different plow to run here because he's unproven.
Yeah, he has to prove it
He
first.
has to prove it
And
first.
that's why I
Yeah,
like this book. That's why
yeah.
I grew to like this so much, is because we're gonna get to that.
But
Which
Gareth
I
has already
like.
proven he can make that joke,
Yes.
and
Yes.
everybody already respects him, and then they respect him more when he makes that joke.
Mhm. All right. Well, let's stop there because then it gets back to the girls again. And there's a fair bit to be said about that. Uh, the girls and Egwene and
All right, then a
quite a bit there.
quick hiccup, and then we've got about 15 minutes of spoilers, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, so we're back. Sorry for the hiccup there. We are starting spoilers, but I will like to give free advice to all the young men in the audience. This is sexy time with Sam advice. If you want to hook up, small penis jokes work. I mean, this is a. It doesn't matter what you actually have. This is a foolproof system, because if you actually have a small penis, they don't care because they already knew going into bed. But if you don't, anything more than small is a good surprise for them. So it's a win-win-win-win. So there you go. There's sexy time with Sam advice. Small penis jokes work, and they get curious. And once they're there, they're just like, okay, might as well just take one for the team. And so there you go. There's dating advice. Sexy time with Sam. Did you have anything specific for spoilers before I go into the notes I made?
Um. Da, 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 da.
Have we seen anything on season 2 other than it's happening and they already approved a season 3?
I haven't been paying attention.
I
Because
think
it's.
you said it was supposed to come out after the wheel,
Oh
not
yeah.
the Lord of the Rings things
I
happened.
I
So
looked up. I Yeah. I remember looking it up last time, and I don't remember what it said. Just ugh.
okay, so spoilers. I looked up Rhonda Macura is part of Tuon's entourage later. So she, of course, has
Yes.
the
So yeah, I just found that, and I'd forgotten that she, because, and this is hinted at, but basically it's another in the long line of disastrous failures of Elida, is that she gets so livid at the Macura woman and wants her punished severely, as an to set an example, in her words, and it drives her to the Sanchin, so
mhm,
that the Sanchin discovers Fork Root because of Elida, and she's helping them. Macura is helping them manufacture,
mhm.
um, because she hates Aes Sedai so much now. So that was the forum post I found, that was the supposition, was since she joins the Sanchin later, it could be that she is um sending information to a Sanchin agent, and she wouldn't know there was a Sanchin agent, and the kinds of things the Sanchin would ask for, as Macura is thinking, is that the information I'm sending isn't going to hurt anyone, because the Sanchin really just kind of want general information about things, because they're not as worried about the tactical. They're more worried about the occupation than the conquest,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ever conquering army. But then the third pigeon, who knows?
Yeah, and that wasn't even in the spoiler book.
Mm.
So I have so one went west, one went east towards Taverlan, and where did the other go?
Uh, on another direction. So
Oh,
since it's another direction, um, the only thing I can think is that
Saladar. She
uh,
might have had a yellow contact in Saladar as well as in the tower.
no, but the pigeon keeper sends it. So Macura sends two, one to the tower, one west that we are presuming to be the Sanchin. Then the farmer who keeps the pigeons, he goes in, holds up the, does the trick of the paper you were writing on top of, and sends a third pigeon to someone else.
Yeah, but let's look to see if the little tower has information on what happened
Could
before
be,
they should have, because
but
he might have been an agent for the little tower.
since it's yet a third direction is basically what it says. My thinking is that he's one of Balwar's agents
Ooh, that's another good one. Well,
because
there's
and
three
that would
options.
that would be
There's
going east to it. It can't be south because there's nothing south.
yeah, there's really three options. It's Balwar, like you just brought up. It's a dark friend, or it's the little tower.
Yeah.
One of those three, it has to be, because Rand hasn't set up a network yet.
Mhm.
And there's maybe White Cloak, but that would be reaching. So we can look for if the White Cloaks have a clue, but I don't think they ever come across Fork Root,
Yeah.
which would be like the White Cloak thing to come across in all of these books. If they wanted the ultimate weapon against their mortal enemy, but yeah, I don't see that, or I haven't seen that. So we actually got to pay attention now, because he didn't do that on accident. The worst thing is, though, is maybe it was in the last three books and Sanderson never picked up on it.
Mm.
And that could have been something that got lost. But again, as Scott said, the too many threads, man. It's hard not to get lost. Uh, one of the notes I had was Jylen and Amethera, their relationship,
Mhm.
and this is why it's a spoiler, because we're not here yet, because we don't even get to where this would be a thing till the end of this book. But they could have used the Morgase escape to build that up, I think. Because remember, Amethera becomes a servant after she's thrown from power, and they could have had them come together at some point, which I think they actually do, don't they?
Much later, yeah.
Yeah, so they come together, and they could have used that to push forward that story, because we would have had Morgase falling in love with Talonvor at the same time Amethera was building a relationship with Jylen, and we could have had something going there.
Or did you have any other spoiler thoughts? I thought you had another note that you took.
Uh, this might be something that develops as we go, but I wrote Egwene is Trump, which is probably why everybody hates her. Uh, there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, the thing that jumps to mind when you say that is one of the things that drove conservative Christians especially crazy in the 2016, and why a lot of them said they wouldn't vote for him, is when he said, "I've never asked God for forgiveness because I've never made a mistake."
That was better than what I was going to say.
Well, and one of the reasons that jumped to mind is because I pulled up the comments, and one of the things, our chief fan and Egwene hater, Scott said, Egwene is the least honest of all the Emmons Field Five, even with herself.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I reread Watt, I like her less. And that is a good point. That is her chief character flaw, especially the latter part, the not being honest with herself. Now, I think that's why I say her arc is so good, because in the end, especially, where her arc gets so good to me, it just takes a long time to get there. So I can understand why people would get annoyed with her and not feel like it's enough of a payoff for how long it took to get there, is when she gets captured by the tower.
So
And
this
that there's a lot of payoff there for things that have been being set up for 10 books or whatever it is.
This is where I don't know where Scott is politically, but this is where Scott's going to love me here because this parallels to something he said many, many, many episodes ago about Egwene. Is Trump was elected to drain the swamp, but then he didn't do a whole lot. Egwene was the outsider coming in because of all the corruption, and she didn't do shit to change anything. In fact, she perpetuated the status quo once she got into power.
The thing she did that she was intended to do that she actually did do is that she brought the tower back together at the critical time. She brought the tower back together and healed it before Tarmogoyf. And that is something that probably only Cadsuin of any living Aes Sedai could have done.
Yeah, but she didn't bring the world back together because she
No.
still treated Rand the same way
She
the
treated
tower
Rand the
treats
same
men.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, she became a part of the tower
Mhm.
rather than leading the tower
Which, when we talk to Trump,
to somewhere
he
new.
became part of the
Mhm.
establishment, and in his uh, ill-conceived notion, kind of trajectory, the establishment didn't want him.
Now, where the analogy continues to grow is that, to her credit, what she does do is she she sets some balls rolling that don't pay off in the series because they are things that other people are going to do in the fourth age.
Mhm.
Like the way she wants to link all women who can channel, even if they're not part of the tower. And that is something she does set the ball rolling that, to an extent, lessens the hubris of the White Tower. But to your and Scott's point, as she becomes part of the tower, it's no longer an association, and you see from her points of view that it's going to be led by the White Tower. We should be in charge.
Now, what we do get is the implication that most likely Cadsuane becomes the Emerald in seat. What we didn't get in real life was a Cadsuane to take over post.
and
Uh,
and and,
uh,
and where you where the supposition is that the fourth age is going to be in good hands is that she doesn't want the job
no, no,
at
no, no,
all.
absolutely,
That makes her the
and
best person for the job.
and that's the thing. That's the difference between the books and the real life is, yeah. We do have a lot of parallels to my little analogy there with Egwene and Trump, but we didn't have the Cadsuane. And Cadsuane, what she brings in was the part that Egwene lacked. Cadsuane lived a life in the last what was probably 5 6 months where she was with Rand before the last battle, where she was in the midst of integrating men and women, where they were bonding each other. Her whole crew bonded Asha Aman, and we get with Logain them bonding Aes Sedai. And so we have this integration that's going on that Egwene was not privy to. And when she found out about it, she hated it because it was not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
so what we get with Cadsuane is, okay, Egwene did a lot of good things to bring things back together, but this is the part she's missing. And this is the part I lived. And actually, I lived a shit ton of time before that too.
Yeah.
And I think Cadsuane's actually one of the most compelling characters in the whole book, or a series of books, I should say.
Mhm.
And we haven't gotten to her yet at all in our readings, uh, but yeah, those were the spoilers I had. The rest of my notes have to do with the other stuff. So when you talked about cuddling, it actually plays into what I was talking about the gays. So anything else before we finish wheel time?
So there is something that jumps out at me from one of Scott's comments.
Oh shit, I forgot to go through the comments again.
So the problem we have with discussing the science of Jordan's world is that we're trained to think of time as a linear progression. Jordan
Mm-hmm.
hypothesizes, what if time is circular, cyclical? This is essentially a foreign concept to our physics.
No,
I
it's not.
disagree. I
I
disagree on two
disagree. Yeah.
points. First of all, I don't think the wheel, the ages is that literal, that physical. I don't think it's a law of physics in his world. What it is narrative, which is wholly true, even if you look at uh, real history. That is something that is discussed and debated since the beginning of recorded history, since the beginning. That's Thucydides, the first, who is considered the first historian, is the cycle of time, the rise and fall, and then of empires, and then the rise of new empires. I can't remember who said it, but there's a saying, a relatively modern saying of um, hard times make
Mm.
strong men make good times make weak men make hard times make dot dot dot, and it goes on. So there is something cyclical to time, to the narrative history of humanity, simply because that is what we are. That is who we are. We are in some ways constrained by our nature, so that these themes are going to come up over and over again.
So go back to it. I think it's in the first Sexy Time with Sam, but I know it's in some of the other previous episodes. One of my themes from a scientific standpoint is everything is cyclical. Our hormone profiles, our uh the seasons. The seasons is a good example of cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Nikolai Tesla says if we think of everything in threes and sixes, everything makes sense. And he probably put a numerical value to cycles, which happen typically go in threes. So there's a reason the pyramids were designed the way they were in triangles. Everything is cycles, and so no, we're very aware of cycles. Uh, it's just the fact that we have to also acknowledge that time runs linear within those cycles. So the nature of things is going like this, whereas time is a constant. And when we look at time as a constant, that's our limiter. Uh, Everybody's seen the news on okay, so aliens actually exist. Okay, Pentagon finally says so.
Mhm.
Well, we also know from everything we currently know that nothing travels faster than the speed of light. Well, if that's the case, then either we're missing something or these things live a long, 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 long time because the speed of light from even the closest constellation, which would be Andromeda, is thousands of light years. So there has to be something different that we don't know about. And in the Wheel of Time world, they bend reality to put things together versus actually travel that distance faster, right? So yeah, we understand that everything is cyclical, but at the same time, you're getting very metaphysical when you talk about uh, time and progression. So it's a difficult topic to talk about without going in circles. No pun intended.
So another Scott comment that made me go, I I hadn't thought about this before, but I can't think of a contradiction. I can't think of a time where it does happen. Is Rand's forces march under the banner of the full yin yang, the full Aes Sedai symbol,
Mm-hmm.
but not one Aes Sedai ever asks why. That's ha. You know what? That's a good damn point. Yeah.
this one is more up my wheelhouse. Rand isn't much of a ladies' man. He has no cultural background. He doesn't have moves or game. He's not suave or charming. Well, Scott, let me bring in a little science here. I would have the articles to back me up if I had read these ahead of time. This is why this is one of the comments that made me wish I read them ahead of time. Was there everybody throws around the word privilege quite a bit. There are two things that actually are privilege in this world, and it's good looks and height. If you have those two things, you have all the game in the world. You could be the most awkward, weird person in the world, and women will still approach you. Now, you may ruin it after that, but at the same time, this is measurable. This is something we have measured in societies, and it goes across all societies, not just Western society. If you're good looking and tall, you have game. What you do with it after is your own fault. So,
uh, Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this back in the day, as a way to illustrate without saying openly what he was doing, the absurdity of the proto woke movement. Because I mean, he's been dead for like 10, however many years now, 5 years, whatever. No, because he just died when we started talking, so it's just a couple years ago. But
we have an
stopped
episode
recording for that.
on his
Yeah,
yeah.
but so I first remember him using this term like 20 years ago. Is he talked about how we need the next civil rights frontier is going to have to be laws to protect the ugly. And he called them Uglo Americans.
Uglo Americans, nice. Oh,
But that actually, put a pin in that. We'll talk about that next time, because next time the girls run into Gallad.
mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that when we
Who
stopped,
is
because I
taller
was
than average and extremely good looking.
and I was thinking about that as I was flipping through to see what was next. And this is where we first actually get to see him as a character, because he actually does stuff and he says stuff and he has some real interactions, because every other interaction has been from one of the girls' points of view, and they've just been going gaga over him.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had, as you were talking about with Avienda, the juices get flowing, the lizard brain kicks in, and that's all they can think about. So
Which is
all
funny.
they see is a piece of meat.
I would love to see in the comments who should play Gallad, because he is supposed to be this stunningly beautiful man that even me as another man should say, man, he's beautiful. Uh, and I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of who I would put there, but again, it's a man's perspective. I can't think of who the best looking man in the world is. And I put I can't remember the actor's name, but he played Jamie in Outlander. That's Gawain to me.
Mm.
He's got the curly locks. He's got the
Well, when I read the image I saw was Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt.
but he's supposed to be darkly handsome.
Oh, I thought he had the same complexion as the.
No, he has dark hair.
So he has more of
Yeah.
the Karheen side.
Yeah.
And okay. I thought he looked more similar to Gawain and Elayne.
Maybe like a young Rob Lowe, but taller.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that would work. That would probably
Oh,
work.
we'll see what we can come up with next time. All right. Well, that's all the spoiler talk I got. So I think that's the end of part one. You got anything else?
No, that's all the spoiler talk I had too. So we'll go into part two, which will be some apparently sexy time with Sam, which is awkward because we're talking about the gays. And there are some political things we need to talk about. Do you want to? We might touch on some COVID just because it never seems to go away. And so stick around if you like it. If you don't, then this is the end of episode 102, part one. We didn't give any advice, no disclaimers needed. other than read Wheel of Time because it's cool.
Yep.